What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated over on Fan Nation. Appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode wherever you're tuned in, whether that be the podcasting app of your choice or here on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres. We just appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to talk some Ducks with us. And if you are here on YouTube, kindly ask that you take a minute out of your day to smash that like and subscribe button. It is a tremendous help to what we're doing here, and we appreciate it. So, in today's episode, we have another recruiting focus. I'm coming to you guys with a big-time visitor spotlight, and that is five-star Texas defensive lineman David Hicks. Just to give you the rundown on Hicks real quick, I don't have my normal setup. I'm away from Eugene right now, so unfortunately can't share my screen right now. But just to give you guys a quick little rundown on David Hicks, he's out of Paetow High School in Katy, Texas. He transferred from Allen High School, which is one of the Texas powerhouse programs. He is 6'4", 275 pounds. He is an Under Armour All-American. He's rated 5 stars. 0.9977 on the 247 Sports Composite, number 4 player in the entire country for 23, number 1 defensive lineman, and the very top prospect in the state of Texas. On his 247 Sports profile, 38 reported offers, but we're going to talk about a couple different schools that are in the mix here. Obviously, Oregon, with Hicks making his way out west for the spring game. That's his most recent visit. But there's a couple other schools that I want to talk about as far as schools that Oregon is going to have to contend with in this recruitment. So, like I said, Hicks made it out to Eugene for the spring game, and kind of some of the standouts from that visit were the atmosphere that the 40,000 plus fans created at Autzen Stadium. Whether you've been there once, your first time, or a million times, I think a lot of people would probably agree that atmosphere at Autzen is something special. And for them to be able to market that in the spring, which is going to be one of their biggest recruiting periods, aside from the summer, and then obviously during the season, I think that says a lot. Oregon hasn't really picked up too much momentum right now on the recruiting trail after the spring game. But I think that being able to sell that game day atmosphere and kind of game day product in the spring is something that's really invaluable when you just consider the fact that recruiting never stops. Recruits are taking visits to other schools all the time, other spring games as well throughout spring ball, but spring ball is over pretty much across the country. So the atmosphere stood out, and then so did the play of the defensive line, which I thought was pretty encouraging. They got plenty of pressure on the quarterback, highlighted by guys like DJ Johnson, Braden Swinson, Trevin Maya even got in the backfield a couple times. And granted, right, it's a little bit hard to gauge how well a defensive line or offensive line played for that matter in a spring game, seeing that the units are mixed up. There's kind of a gray area about when the ref blows the play dead or lets the play keep playing, rather, lets it keep going. So that's a little bit of a gray area, but the defensive line did play well. And they were missing a lot of notable starters, guys like Brendan Dorless, Keon Ware-Hudson, Popo Amavai. So I thought that was a good takeaway from Hicks. Just wanted to talk some more about kind of what stood out to him on this visit, what coaches he got to spend time with, what he's liking about Oregon, things of that nature. So it looks like right now that Tosh Lupoi is really doing the heavy lifting here in this recruitment for the Ducks. Hicks was telling me, rather, when he was talking about, I was asking him, what stood out to you about Tosh Lupoi, the new Oregon defensive coordinator, former 247 Sports SEC Recruiter of the Year during his time at Alabama, certainly a heavy hitter for the Ducks on the recruiting trail. And this is what Hicks had to say, just really always calling me and texting me. And let's see what else. He's a really cool coach to talk to. He talks to me and my family all the time. I asked Hicks how often that communication is coming from the Oregon staff, and he's saying that he's hearing from the Ducks coaches every single day. And that shows me something, and I'm sure it shows David something as well, that this Oregon staff's made him a priority. It is super important for the Ducks to get back into the state of Texas. I feel like we've said it a million times. If you follow recruiting, you know there are 3 huge states that any program needs to prioritize. That is California, Texas, and Florida. Oregon, the easiest state for Oregon to get into right now is obviously California, right? Look at the foundation of their classes these past couple of cycles, and really throughout the history of the program, it's been in California. And then you have Texas, which the Ducks were really present in the 22 cycle, but after the coaching transition and Cristobal's departure, things fell apart a little bit. They were able to get a little bit of Texas juice, though, towards the end of that class with Kamari Terrell, defensive back out of Shoemaker High School in Killeen, Texas. So that was a good thing for Oregon. And then I've been banging that drum that they need to get back into Florida big time, but that is probably the toughest state for them to get into just because of the geography. But Brandon Dorlus is a guy who's from Florida, and he's playing some great football for the Ducks in his time at Oregon. But it's really not just Tosh Lupoi that's involved on this one. Dan Lanning, the head coach for the Ducks, is also putting in some work as far as Hicks recruitment. Hicks got to spend some time with Dan the Man, as recruits call him, and he was saying that, I feel like Coach Lanning's a really good coach. He's doing something special at Oregon. So just more and more recruits that we talk to are just kind of raving about the vision that Lanning has for the future of the Ducks program, for the atmosphere that he's created around the program in Eugene. Admittedly, not too hard to create a lot of excitement around a program like Oregon, right? A brand like Oregon. You got you got the Nike flash, you have the recent success on the football field, and more guys going in the draft. Admittedly, the 2022 draft wasn't great for Oregon, but certainly producing a top 5 pick like Kayvon Thibodeau, third straight top 10 pick for the Ducks in as many years. That's still going to have some it's still going to have some weight, going to carry some weight, right? And certainly that's relevant in Hicks's case, seeing that he plays in the front 7 along the defensive line. But so we got to take in Oregon on this visit, kind of go through all the standard things that recruits get to do, get to tour the facilities, get to go inside Autzen, get to take pictures, do a photo shoot in those Oregon uniforms. But when it's all said and done, now that he's wrapped up that trip and he's back in Texas, I asked him what really stood out the most about Oregon. And his answer shouldn't be too surprising. He said, really just being able to play for Coach Lupoi and a really good defensive mind in Coach Lanning is really exciting, end quote. So the opportunity to play for those guys is huge, and it should be because they've both had a success at a pretty high level. You look at the guys that Lupoi has not only recruited, but also coached during his time, whether it be at Cal, Washington, Alabama. Also had some success in the NFL ranks as well, right, with the Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Atlanta Falcons. That's obviously going to be notable for a recruit, and that was something that stood out about this visit. Just the pedigree that the Ducks have on this coaching staff. I think that's one of the things that I've really liked about this new staff that Lanning has assembled, and I've said it a couple times, I think, so I don't repeat myself too much. Just the blend of college and NFL experience. But we are going to keep rolling right along on this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. We're going to step aside for a quick ad break. So make sure you guys stay with us, and we will see you after this. Welcome back to the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated over on Fan Nation. We are rolling right along in this episode, doing a special 5-star visitor spotlight, talking about Katy, Texas defensive lineman David Hicks, who was out in Eugene for a visit to the spring game. So let's just kind of go big picture on this recruitment, right? Because like I said earlier in this episode, there's a lot of interest in this recruit, and that's what you would expect with someone of his caliber. A couple other visits that Hicks has been able to take during his recruitment. We're looking at Texas A&M, Miami, and Michigan State. Michigan State, they've been really impressive as far as just what they've been able to do on the field. I think a lot of people kind of wrote them off last year under Mel Tucker as far as just not expecting that much from them. But then they almost turned around and made a run at the playoffs. But obviously that didn't end up happening. But Kenneth Walker was a big success story for the Spartans out there when we're looking at last season and what they did. I posted some of David's pictures on that story on Ducks Digest. And Michigan State, like Oregon, is doing some really cool stuff with like lightsabers in their pictures. So just love seeing that creative side of everything and kind of how they're marketing this program and kind of any program and how they're really going about selling themselves. So that's just a quick note that I thought I'd throw out here, is that you guys can always find the full recruiting update with all the quotes from David or any recruit rather over on Ducks Digest. Those are usually premium stories, but that's the first place you can find them. So definitely go head on over and subscribe to Ducks Digest, trying to get as many of those recruiting interviews out as I can. So we talked a little bit about Michigan State. They've had some success, and certainly Mel Tucker is a coach that has a strong reputation. And then Miami is another one as well, right? That's a pretty big staff as well under Mario Cristobal. Um, let's see, Joe Salavea is over there, obviously, after coming over from Oregon. Definitely familiar with him, and he has a good reputation developing the defensive line. I think that's maybe the edge guys had a little bit to be desired, but that wasn't so much with Salavea. He was doing more so with a lot of the interior guys, which I think was kind of a strength for Oregon on their defense last year, and I think that'll carry over to this year. But Miami with that staff, and we know how strong of a recruiter Mario Cristobal is, that certainly figures to be a formidable opponent on the recruiting show for Oregon with any prospect, but certainly with Hicks. We know how Cristobal likes to prioritize building in the trenches. So those are a couple of the other visits that Hicks has been able to take recently, just kind of getting people up to speed on what's going on in his recruitment. A couple other updates as far as what's next for Hicks. He told me that he plans on taking 3 official visits this summer. We don't know which schools those are just yet, but probably figures that Texas A&M is going to get one of them if I had to give my personal guess after speaking with him and just kind of reading the tea leaves in his recruitment. And then it looks like he plans, as of right now at least, to announce his commitment at the Under Armour All-American game. That usually comes in January, and it's usually held in Orlando, Florida, I believe. So we'll see if they change the venue, but that's just what we're going off of in the past. So let's see here. After talking to David Hicks, let's kind of give a little bit of Torres' take here, right? If you guys have been reading me for a while, following my work, that's a written story that I do. I'm trying to bring that back some more, but I want to kind of give my take on where Oregon stands here after being able to talk to David Hicks. I think that this is the type of defensive lineman that Oregon needs, right? They've been winning the offensive trenches for the past couple of years. That was never really a concern with Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, tons of big-time offensive line talent coming into Eugene. Some currently on the roster right now, but certainly Penei Sewell is the shining example of that offensive line identity, the tradition that the Ducks have developed with him going 7th overall. And last year's draft and playing for the Lions, I actually saw him at the spring game just last weekend in Eugene. He kind of I think he had a towel on, so he was a little under the radar, but I saw him when I was walking over on the sideline after the game, and that is a big dude, big dude. So Penei's doing great in the NFL, and excited to see what is in store for him in his second season. But back to Hicks, right? This is a guy that can help Oregon's identity because you need more big-time dudes on the defensive line. You really do. I think that we know that Dan Lanning's going to prioritize the line of scrimmage, winning that battle, but you got to get guys that can really cause some havoc there. And you want someone that can be more than just a run stuffer. You want someone who can collapse the pocket and get pressure on the quarterback. And Hicks has certainly shown that he has the athleticism to do that. And then if you coach him up, even better, the upside just keeps going up. But a reason that Oregon fans, I think, should be excited is first, he came out early in the recruiting process, relatively early. He came out on his own dime on an unofficial visit. So I think they put themselves in a great spot to get an official visit. But this is the type of guy that I think Oregon can get under Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi. Georgia just had 15 guys taken in the 2022 draft. I think 5 first-rounders on Dan Lanning's defense. And I think it's worth saying here, I don't think that Dan Lanning can take credit for all of those guys that went in the first round from that defense, right? And I don't think he would. I think, he would admit that it's a team effort. He's not the only coach on that Georgia defense. There are a lot of really, really smart defensive minds there. But at the end of the day, he can still point to that and say, hey, I coached that guy up. I was part of the group of coaches that coached up 5 first rounders and won a national championship. So that's certainly going to factor into the pitch, not only with Hicks, but with a lot of these recruits that are coming through Eugene. But then Lanning coupled with Tosh Lupoi, who is probably the most esteemed recruiter on this staff, I think that it puts them in a great spot to pull off getting a guy like this. But Case in point, it's not going to be easy. I talked about all these other schools, some of the other ones that Oregon's going to have to go up against. But from a roster standpoint, this is obviously a guy that you want. I think defensive line is definitely a priority in the 2023 class, really any class, but certainly in 23. Projected to lose Paetow Mavai and Brandon Dorless after this season. The Ducks do have Tavita Pomee, the defensive lineman out of Utah, in the 2023 class. He's in the fold right now. But right now, to get back to my Torres' take, just as far as where I think the Ducks stand here, I think they're in a good spot for sure. But this is going to be a tough pull. This is going to be a tough pull. I would wager that Texas A&M is in the lead for Hicks. I don't think that's too hot of a take, but just based off of talking to him, he said that Texas A&M has been recruiting him since the 8th grade, and that feels like he has a really strong relationship with Texas A&M. The plan that they have for using him on the defensive line is something that he told me stands out to him, playing a little bit of inside, playing tackle, and moving kind of all around the defensive front. That's something that stands out for him. At 6'4", 275, I think that he probably projects as someone who's a little bit more of an interior guy, but he is very athletic. So maybe if you get to tighten up his frame a little bit and kind of get him in a weight program, maybe you can have him as someone who, or maybe he's just athletic enough to play on the outside as is. But that's something he told me that stands out to him. But let's just run through this 2022 Texas defensive line class, because that class was stupid as far as the depth that they had along the defensive line in that recruiting class alone. Not even, mind you, the guys that were already on that roster. You have 5-star Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, who Texas A&M flipped late. Anthony Lucas from Chaparral, Scottsdale, Arizona. That's a name Oregon fans are familiar with. He was borderline a 5-star, listed as number 59 in the country on 247 Sports. And then you have guys like Walter Nolan, who was a 5-star, number 2 player in the country. Shamar Stewart, who the Aggies got over Miami late. He's coming out of Opelika, Florida. Levius Overton, who the Ducks were involved with pretty much till the very end. He reclassified from the 2023 class to the 2022 class. And then you have Anaya White out of Philadelphia, another huge name on the defensive line that the Ducks were in on, but another big-time guy going to Texas A&M. And you also have Malik Sila out of Katy, a 4-star edge player. So there is just so much talent. And the last guy I just wanted to mention was Jaden Scarlett from Argyle, Texas. So not only does A&M have a tremendous, maybe I don't want to say tremendous history, but they have guys that have played very high-level football at A&M. Look at Von Miller, right, when former Oregon defensive coordinator Tim DeRuyter was out at College Station. And then you have all these guys that are coming in the 2022 class, and some of those guys are going to see the field. That is a huge haul on the defensive line, and you can't find snaps for all of them. But some of them, I'd probably say maybe 2 or 3 are definitely going to be guys that make a case to be a contributor. So case in point here, I'm going to say that Oregon has a shot. Definitely going to be tough to ultimately land him. They got plenty of time. Sure, they want to get one of those official visits if he ends up taking it in the summer. Ideally, you want to get him back for a real game at Autzen Stadium, because as great as that spring game atmosphere was, hard to beat a fall Saturday in Eugene. And I think a lot of Oregon fans would agree with that on a game day. And the Ducks have the heavy hitter recruiters on the staff to go out and get a guy like David Hicks. They did it with Kayvon Thibodeau, who just went 5th overall to the Giants. So why not try to do it again? But that's all I have for this one, you guys. Big visitor spotlight with David Hicks out of Katy, Texas, coming out to Oregon for a visit. Ducks are in a great spot, daily communication. So they are full steam ahead on the recruiting trail with this talented defensive lineman. But that'll do it for this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to listen or watch us. However you're tuning in, we appreciate you. But that'll do it for this one. And we will see everybody in the next episode. Take care.